Hi, this is Wendy Petty, Chief Sales Officer from Erwin. I am pleased to introduce today's session, Creating Value by Understanding Our Business. Today's session is being conducted by Carl Etherington, who is from HSBC. Welcome, Carl. Happy to have you here today.
Okay, thank you, Wendy, and hello to everybody. I'm very glad to be here today, and hopefully by the end of this short session, I'll give you some insights on how we've created value in the business by actually trying to understand our business and the journey that we've been on. So by the end of this session, and hopefully I won't drown you with too many facts. What I wanted to do today is really to kind of share some of the challenges that we've faced in terms of trying to understand our business, and share how we've actually been meeting those challenges, and some of the lessons that we have learned to date, and what we're trying to do in the future. So a little bit about myself. I'm an engineer. In fact, I'm a marine engineer. I used to work for a company called Shell. I was on the super tankers back in my youth, and I put a lot of my the way that I work and the way I see things down to that very rounded grounding that I had as an engineer. Because as you can imagine, being a marine engineer, if you're in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean or the Pacific Ocean, as I found myself many times, you had to kind of get on and fix things and actually understand things. So to give you a little bit of insight into kind of a seagoing officer's life, particularly engineering officer, is that we would spend around about 6 months on a ship, but you would only get 2 or 3 days to hand over from the previous engineer. So we had to actually understand how the ships work. Now, a lot of the ships from a very high level work the same way, but it's those little nuances, those little differences that you find in ships, how they operate, what the machinery is, what the equipment is. It's understanding those little nuances so you can actually go and operate the ship with confidence in the future. So I've always been, that was a big lesson for me in my very early days, is actually kind of having a good reference in terms of understanding how the ships worked, and how the engineering worked. So that's a little bit about myself, and I've worked in various business improvement, process improvement for probably about 30 odd years now. I was in manufacturing for many years, and then I moved into the into the more financial services probably over the last 15 years or so. So I'm now with HSBC, and I just want to give you a little bit of an insight into HSBC. HSBC is massive. I had a colleague once who said to me, "You won't believe the scale of this organisation," and when you actually put the numbers down on paper, then you start to realise the scale of things. We've got the last count. We've got assets of $2.6 trillion. It is one of the world's largest banking and financial services organisations. Apparently, we have more than 39 million customers, 235,000 employees, and we operate across 65 countries. So it's a truly massive organisation. It always makes me smile when I'm at kind of dinner parties or in social gatherings. People say, "Oh, I know someone who works at HSBC. Do you know them?" And probably 99% of the time that you don't, because the organisation is so fast. So we've been such a huge organisation. We have a lot of unbelievably complex so it's really difficult actually for one person or a group of people to explain exactly how we operate, and it's very the complexity is out as well. Now there are sheer size isn't the only contributor to complexity. what we find is we've got lots of diversity across our organisation. For instance, there's lots of technology issues. At the last count, we had something like over 15,000 listed application systems that we use, and I'm sure that there are a number of user-defined applications that we haven't actually counted. As I mentioned, we operate in 65 countries, so not only does that provide us difficulties, or difficulties may be the wrong word, but we have, in terms of actually operating, our cultures are different, and even within process, the cultures are different. So that is a challenge in itself. The regulatory environment is ever increasing. It is the kind of growth industry within the banking world, and we have a number of regulatory requirements that we have to meet, and different regulatory requirements. So the same process will be subjected to different requirements by the particular regulators. There are still a number of countries out there that exist on kind of paper documents rather than electronic, and wet signatures rather than kind of e-signatures. And also, the level of risk appetite that we have across our different regulatory environment is different. Is different also. Of course, in 65 different countries, we have different clients. Their wants and needs are different. Their risk appetites are different. And we have a wide range of different clients. We have huge conglomerates, right through to young people. In fact, my youngest, he's 10 years old and just opened up his first bank account. So we have a full spectrum of clients and different client requirements. We have a number of different products. We go from very sophisticated derivatives, financial instruments, through to insurance products, through to quite simple bank accounts. So as you can imagine, we have lots of complexity in our business, one driven by size, but also by the environments that we operate in across the globe. So hence, from that, we're also being challenged, actually, and particularly by the UK regulators, is actually, do we actually understand how we operate? Do you, and that's a question they're always asking us, do you know how you operate? Are you too big are you too big as an organisation to be able to operate properly? So hence, that's one of the drivers that we have to face. So what do we want to achieve? Well, we want to be able to explain how we actually operate. And once we can actually explain how we operate, and kind of untangling the knots, the mess that we have, is that we want to be able to effectively manage ourselves. So our shareholders, our senior executives expect the business to be managed effectively. We need to align to group objectives. We need to address all the different regulatory requirements. So to be able to do that, we need to know how we're operating, or how we are managed effectively. We need global consistency in terms of what we do. So as you're probably aware, you've probably seen in the press, HSBC is undergoing a massive transformation at the moment. So we need a consistent way of actually how we describe, how we face the market, how we deliver products, how we deliver services to our different client bases. And also this helps our kind of cross functions, our global functions, actually align with ourselves in terms of providing a global consistent service and products. So this will help us actually, kind of break down some of the silo thinking. So one of the key issues in the bank is that we actually think in silos. HSBC is made up of a number of different businesses. We have our what are called WPB, which is our wealth and personal banking. We have wholesale banking. We have private banking, and we have markets and security services, and that's the area that I operate in. So, but again, to get consistency across our customers and meeting our kind of common objectives with the regulator, we need to actually start to think across silos and think outside these very siloed thinking that we have in the business. Now, this is one of the things that we found when we've been on this journey, is that actually everybody, we think in a very siloed way, but actually there are a lot of cross-business services occurring in the bank, which has been a bit of an eye-opener for a lot of people in terms of actually when we provide a service, we just don't rely on one banking area. We rely on a number of different business lines to provide that service to the customer. Okay. We also need to be in perfect synchronization. And again, and this is really interesting, and this is really come out from the work that we've been doing, is that we have multiple and overlapping kind of operational taxonomies and lots of conflicting and we have an awful lot of conflicting operational concepts. For example, we have 16 different ways of defining what criticality is. We have 8 different ways of defining what a service is. And I give you a little bit of insight. I sat on several meetings over several months to discuss and agree what the difference was between a service and a product. And I'm still slightly scarred from that to this day, but we're now starting to kind of move on this. So as you can imagine, we're having all these different taxonomies, people referring to different things using different language. This increases our complexity. It starts to create barriers. It stops things being done quickly, and ultimately creates a lot of confusion in what we do. So what we're trying to do is get some kind of alignment across the business. So we're much more coherent, and we're consistent in the way that we operate as a business. So we deliver a consistent set of products and services to our customers. And what we're not certain is that is because different business lines work in different ways, we're providing an inconsistent level of service, a level of risk and control to our different customers. So we need to just to be precisely aligned as the slide suggests. So that's the kind of where we want to be. So there's this real desire now to capture all aspects of the business and start to link those together and start to actually to kind of to understand how the business actually works. And this is 3 key clear phases. One of them is understanding what we're doing. So once we understand business, we're then able to control it, and then once we can control, we can then improve the business. And we're doing it in very defined, these 3 very defined, clear phases. What we don't want to do is jump into, we need to improve the business. We've been, and there's quite a lot of pressure for us to do that, to jump into the improve phase. But what we're trying to do is let's understand, let's capture what we do, let's capture the critical parts, our critical services. How do we operate those across the business? Then we'll control them, and then once we're in control, we can then actually start to improve the business. Okay, right. So our first step in terms of understanding the business was to actually understand what the key components are that we will be capturing, or we'll be trying to understand. So in terms of our process stroke capabilities, we had no single source of process or capabilities in the business. And in fact, we even had a stage where we'd have process diagrams, capability maps, on PowerPoint, maybe Visio, maybe if we're lucky shared on a SharePoint somewhere, most of the time saved on people's desktops. So we had no single source and trusted source of our processes and capabilities in the business. We didn't have any kind of change control on those, and what we found is that there was a lot of rework. When we went to look at a process to either kind of re-engineer or just to understand the process, the first thing we would go and do is we would go and actually kind of process map the process again, and we kind of vaguely remembered that we did it 18 months ago. So one of the things we wanted to establish was a single trusted source repository of all our process and capabilities. Applications, we were a little bit more in control there. We did have a database which lists all our 15,000 plus applications and holds data and properties about those applications, which is great. Data, we also had, again, in a separate database somewhere. Our risk and controls, it all existed in a self-contained database, which is great, but not linked to our process. Same with organization, same with location. So what we've started to do is to bring all those components, all those elements together and started to link them. And once we started to link them, actually that started to give us some insights into the complexity of the business. So this is our starting point in terms of starting to understand the business. I've thrown this slide in because it's one of my favourite slides. So the first thing that we're doing is actually exploring that complexity, and then we'll simplify. Okay, so in terms of the key components, we wanted to actually start to introduce a framework, which is, and we started from our services, which we provide to our clients. We started to look at the capabilities that support that service, and then we would look at what are the processes that deliver those capabilities. So this is our kind of almost our pyramid here, but this is our column in terms of exactly what we wanted to look at, and this is our kind of core structure for our architecture. We've kind of enhanced it a little bit more, and this again is very much still a simplified framework, but we started to bring other elements in depending on the type of programs and also all those different elements. So you can see, we start with the customer, they consume service, service is produced by a capability is delivered by a process. And there are a number of linkages out to application, data, location, organization, etc. No rocket science here, but this is one of the kind of most common slides used within HSBC, particularly within the kind of architectural world, is that this is the starting point. And we never had this previously. People didn't know the relationships between these different components of the business. Okay. Now, once we started to do this, we're then starting to align as a business. Now, it wasn't easy getting here. As I mentioned previously, the difference between a service and a product, there was huge debate, as you can imagine, every component here, probably every component here, exactly what these are. Capability, huge debate. Actually, what is a process? What isn't a process? It was the huge debates that we had. But so that's where this is our kind of our core model. We use there is a more complex model in this, but this is the one that's used in kind of 95% of our discussions when we're talking about actually what is it that we're trying to understand, what we're trying to capture, and do we have duplications? What are the meanings of those capabilities? Once we start to understand what those definitions are, we then start to rationalize them, and we're hoping to get down to a much lower number. I think we're down to 150 at the moment. We're looking to rationalise them. We've got a lot further to go. And then once we've rationalised them, are they actually capturing everything that we do? So we're enhancing. And we've got a nice little acronym there called CURE. One of the things with HSBC, which is, I should have put it at the beginning actually in terms of complexity, HSBC does love a TLA, a three-letter acronym, or just acronyms in this case. So we do like an acronym, but we're in the middle of this process at the moment. We're doing the understanding and we're doing the rationalisation. And in terms of doing that, what we're having to do is we're having to go out to the business and actually talk to the business and say, what is this capability? Now, this is quite challenging because people will talk about tasks that they do, and we're trying to get them back to actually bring that up a level or two. What is it? What is the capability that we need to have to deliver a service? So there's a little bit of education there of business. So we're actively doing this at the moment. Our next step, what we are also doing is capturing our processes. And it's my colleague there from Hong Kong. And this is the typical way, or is the way that we will go out and actually capture our processes. I have to admit, some of the more younger guys can actually capture processes directly into Casewise or into Evolved directly. I'm still a little bit old school, and I would do it in this way. But we're within markets and security services. We have something like 5,700 diagrams with 28,000 different process steps. So we've done an awful lot of work, and we probably have only done about 20% of the population. So we've done an awful lot of work. This has also been a big education exercise in terms of actually getting people to start to think in a process way, thinking about end-to-end processes. Now, regulators are starting to want to understand, and they're asking us, do you understand your end-to-end service? Do you understand the processes involved in that? So trying to get people to actually think outside their silos and think about the end-to-end process has been pretty difficult, because people are only really interested in what they want to do. And what we try to do, using the picture that we have in front of us, is that we try to get people to sit into the whole workshop so they can actually see the flow of the end-to-end. Now that helps from an perspective, because they understand what value they're adding to their internal customers, or to the next people in the line, what they're actually passing on, and actually starting to build those relationships. We've had a number of people that have been in these workshops that actually don't know the person that they're passing their work on to, and actually getting them to talk has been a real benefit. So we're kind of capturing our process, and when we capture a process, we're also starting to link in what applications are we using, where is this process undertaken, what team does this work, what risks are we exposed to in our process, what controls, if any, do we have to mitigate those risks, etc. So we're starting to build those connections, build those associations from our processes, and these processes also roll up into our capabilities. So we starting together, we're hanging off the framework, and we start to understand exactly what we're trying to do. So in terms of what is actually produced, this is a typical process flow diagram, and this is for providing an FX cash outcome, so a foreign exchange trade at very high level. What you will notice is that the notation that we use is very simple, and we do that deliberately because we want everybody in the business to actually understand and be able to pick up a diagram and understand the process flow quickly. So we've kind of moved away from kind of being pure BPMN to with all its different symbols, yes, which is great for analysts, but we want a very simple kind of notation so anybody in the business can look at this and they can understand it very, very quickly. We've got a number of shape regions, a number of icons. So I think the red dots are representing that there's a risk associated to that process step. The blue triangles and are that there's a control acting on that process. The little turquoise or teal shield is saying that there are SOX controls, which is around kind of financial reporting controls. We've also got a little computer in the bottom left-hand corner, which denotes that there's a critical application. So there's an application there that if we lost it, then actually there will be a significant impact on the process. And at this level, the other icon that we have is this little yellow post-it note, which denotes that there's an opportunity for improvement there. So what we've found as we've gone through this process and we've gone into the detail is that people said, yeah, there's a problem, and actually there's an opportunity for improvement. So what we do is we tag it as we're doing this process. So we're actually starting to generate ideas, capture issues, etc. as we go through this. Okay. Just kind of showing a kind of concept that we've gone down into kind of lower level details. Again, fairly similar notation, but what we've also shown on there is the actual systems in the blue and the kind of I think that's brown boxes, the actual systems that are being used, so people can quite clearly see those quite quickly. But at the back end of all of these process steps, we also capture capturing the kind of properties of that particular process. So one of the most popular ones is that we start to understand what the level of automation is. So if we look at a process step, we can actually annotate that process step. Is it a manual process? Is it an automated process? Or is it kind of semi-automated? So anything manual immediately comes up as an automation opportunity. We also collect what is the frequency, what's the growth of all the properties going through this particular process step, what the costs are, a big focus on costs, as you can imagine, and also looking at kind of processing times, etc. And we do quite a lot of analysis around that. Okay, so what are some of the findings that we've found by just actually kind of capturing our processes? Well, as I mentioned, we can immediately see where our processes are subjected to, have manual steps. What we found in the past is that we improve one part of the process, we automate it, put some kind of robots in place, but actually downstream, there's still a manual process. Someone is still doing something manually. Someone is still photocopying a PDF. And trust me, that still happens to this day. So we put the kind of level of automation is. So from an end-to-end view, we can actually see, we've automated here, but we've still got this manual step. Should we go and have a look at? Perhaps we should go and have a look at that. What this analysis has also helped us do is started to actually, are the process steps, are they value add? Are they truly value adding? So again, we do this in partnership with the business. And we kind of say, what is the definition of value add? And then we go through this together and say, actually, this is non-value add. Can we eliminate this process step? Can we do something a little bit different here? It helps us understand where our quality issues are quite clearly, and particularly, if we've got some rework loops, we can start to look at those. One of the big pluses of capturing our different processes, so we was looking at the FX cash process for the UK previously. what you will find is that process is different in New York and it's different in Hong Kong. And what we're starting now to do is to see what the consistency is of our processes across the bank. Why do we do things different in Hong Kong, London, New York, or whatever location? Why do we do that? So we look at that also. And there may be good reasons for those inconsistencies. It could be a regulatory reason, but at least we're asking the right question. We also started, from a kind of purely lean perspective, started to look at our bottlenecks. What are our constraints in the process? Why do we have those constraints? Can we do anything with those constraints? Actually, who is involved in the process? One of the most powerful things is that when we have started to link who does the process, is to see where the process travels around the world. So for instance, a UK foreign exchange transaction will start in London. It will then go to Kuala Lumpur. The process will then go to the Philippines, and then from the Philippines it will go back to London, and then from London it will go to India. Now, I appreciate it's all electronic, but actually for the first time we've started to see where our kind of transactions are globally. By seeing the level of automation, we can see where we've got manual workarounds and how much flows for those manual workarounds. And we can actually, for the first time, start doing some kind of tact analysis. We start to understand how much we have to do, and do we have the capacity to actually process that. So from a process perspective, we're getting an awful lot of benefit by actually starting to capture our processes in a systemic way. Okay, so there are other things that we can look at. We can look at system rationalization. As I mentioned before, we've got over 15,000 different applications across the bank. Now, I appreciate it's a massive bank. We're in 65 countries, but that does seem an awful lot of different applications. We have several. Several is not the right word. We have dozens of workflow applications in this business. So, can we rationalize some of those? Can we get down to 2 or 3, or even best, can we get down to 1? So we can use this analysis for our system rationalization. Okay. The other thing that we can look at is, are we organized? Do we have the right organizational alignment? Do we have the right people with the right capabilities actually working on the process? So what we found by doing our capability analysis is that we may have a clearing team looking after one part of the bank. We have a clearing team that might sit on the floor below them doing clearing for a different part of the bank, and actually in effect they're actually doing the same thing, and they've never kind of shared notes. They've never discussed things between them. So and do we need actually 2 teams? Can we actually align our teams better organizationally? Why have 2 or 3 teams when we can have maybe 2 teams? Okay. The other thing that it's allowed us to do is to identify our risks in our process. And by looking at our process and looking at them quite an in-depth level, in some of our processes we've gone down 7 or 8 levels in our kind of risk in our process levels, and it's allowed us to really kind of get into actually what are the risks that we face in those process steps, be it non-financial, or financial risks in our process. So it really enables us to do this, and we use a tool called a failure mode effect analysis. And this allows us for each process step, what we document is what could go wrong in that process step. So we capture that. We capture the causes of that and what the impact is. what the level of how likely is it can happen, and then so that's basically a normal risk assessment. Then with the what we then do is we then look at what controls do we have at the moment to mitigate that risk or that failure, and we document those. So what that allows us to do, and then we look at the effectiveness of that control, and from there what we can start to get see is actually how effective are our controls. Are we being too effective? Have we got too many controls in place? Depending on what our level of risk appetite is in the process. So it gives us a really insightful view at quite a low level of detail in terms of what we're trying to do. So this is, it's, and a word of warning, FMEA is a painful process, but my God, what the output you get from it is really, really powerful, really, really good. There are other benefits with it, which actually people, when you start an FMEA, people really have to look into their processes and really have to be, really understand them. So that's the kind of side benefit of doing this risk identification and control effectiveness. It's also been driven by our regulators. Our regulators now globally are starting to want to understand, do we understand our business? Do you understand our processes? Do you understand, and the next question is, do you actually understand what risks you face, and do you understand how you control those risks? So this is a big area of work that we're involved in at the moment. Okay, so I promise you some lessons learned. It's the first thing is it's really, really hard. This is not easy, and I'll make no apologies for saying that. It's really hard engaging people. It's really hard in getting people to understand. The actual capture of our business is difficult because people have different understanding of what these different components are. People don't necessarily see the value of doing this initially. It's not until they're kind of into the work that they start to understand the value of what you're trying to do. So it isn't easy, and it's really, really hard to do, but very, very worthwhile. One of the things that we found out at very early stages of the program was to develop a set of standards, and we keep to them. So that'd be in naming conventions, referencing conventions, process or diagram notations. We are religious about those standards because we want to kind of keep to those, and it's important to keep to those, particularly when you're starting to link different components across the business, and then being able to report on those. So we are passionate about kind of developing those standards, and more passionate about actually adhering to them. As I've alluded to, the business must be engaged, and they must be involved. This is not a team that sits on a different floor and then kind of draws out process flows or draws out capability models or whatever. They've got to be fully engaged and involved with the business, develop those good relationships with the stakeholders, work as a partnership with those stakeholders. So to give you an example, we have across the whole bank, and I think I mentioned that we've got something like 28,000 process steps and 5,700 process maps. Is that's been produced by a team of 10 globally. So with all the best will in the world, we couldn't do that on our own. We've actually been facilitating that work with the business. So they must be engaged and involved. However, we need to work at pace. We do work at pace. So those workshops that we have, we literally produce those maps within a day or so, if not immediately. And some of the young analysts in HSBC who are working on this project, they actually type these maps real time that are actually creating these maps real time. I'm a little bit older, a little bit more old school. I just can't type quick enough. But we do work at pace. Tenacity, yeah, key attribute, and I think anybody been involved in transformation is that tenacity, that persistence to actually achieve the goal. And that brings me on to the next point, which is actually focusing in on that goal and don't be deflected. It's very easy to be deflected, particularly when you do this type of work, is that people want you to go, oh, can you come and draw this process flow for us? Can you come and document what systems we have? Yeah, because it's a short-term requirement. So we are very focused, to coin a phrase, laser focused on the goal of what we're trying to achieve and when we're trying to achieve it by. And last, build on early success and share that success. Yeah. So whenever we create a map or we create associations or data, it's immediately available through the Evolve tool, and people can see it immediately. They can comment on it immediately. So we don't so people can see the success it brings. We document any opportunity to improve in what we're doing. So they're the kind of key lessons learned. I'm sure we'll learn a lot more as we're going through this. To coin a phrase, we are on a journey, and I think I kind of mentioned earlier in this session that we're probably about 20% through of where we need to be. So I'm sure, if I did this again in a year's time, I would have some other lessons learned in terms of what we're doing. Okay, I'm kind of opening up the floor now for questions and answers.
So Carl, thank you. That was amazing and quite interesting. As you know, I'm pretty intimate with the HSBC
yes.
partnership, and we appreciate all of your support and the work that you put around building out, the Evolve platform within HSBC. One of the things that you said that I just wanted to ask you about, and just to kind of summarize, not having, a single source of truth has probably been the biggest complication within HSBC. The work that you've done, and this is a question I've got for you, the work that you've done, you've talked about a number of different challenges. But, as you mentioned, the bank is massive and you have to deal with all the different business units and you have to get everybody collaborating and you're dealing with different time zones, different personalities. For the listeners, what would you say is, the one piece, the secret sauce in all of this that you've been driving this? What is that secret sauce? Because a lot of times when we talk about our customers using Evolve in massive organizations, it's like it can't be done, but you've proven it could be done. What is the secret sauce?
It's a really good question. I think what it is, for me, it's the partnership. Is that we do this in complete partnership with the business. So as you mentioned, in terms of the driving the Evolve development, etc., it's we provide ideas, but actually we try to get the business to actually drive what is it they want to see, because at the end of the day, they're going to be the ultimate users of this, and whatever we build and whatever we capture is that they've got to use it. So we very much use it, view it as a partnership. In fact, we're doing it on their behalf, and we're kind of helping them. So it's very, very much a partnership, because if we came along and just said, look, we're going to kind of map all your processes, we would get very little buy-in. It would be a struggle to get the resources to kind of sit in kind of a 2-day workshop, even though we're a little bit faster than that now. But that was traditionally. So you just wouldn't get that buy-in. So we work very much on delivering, working as a partnership. That's why we try to deliver early and show results early. And by kind of linking directly to the Evolve site, people can actually see their work immediately and what the value add of that work is.
Carl, thank you very much for taking the time. The session was great. Again, we really appreciate your partnership and for participating in our Erwin Insight 2020 event. So our next session is enterprise architecture. And just to give you a little bit of a timeline, the session at 10 a.m. is called Building a Great Enterprise Architecture Practice. And then after that at 11 is Documenting and Managing Organizational Profiles. So again, thank you for joining. And then Carl will be around for Q&A throughout the Insights event. And again, thank you very much and have a great day, everybody. Enjoy.